Hi, everyone. I'm relationship coach Valerie Green, and I am so excited today to be interviewing Michelle Marchant Johnson. And she is a love and relationship coach that I highly respect. And basically, she helps women be centered in their own value and inspire and ignite love and passion with their Mr. Right. And I'm really excited to talk about this topic today. Michelle is going to talk about the 5 keys to invite the hero out in a man. And I know that that's what so many of my clients come to me saying that they want. And, in the beginning, he was my hero, and now he's just acting uninterested and distant. And what do I do? And so I think so many women can benefit from this topic.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, Valerie, and thank you for that kind introduction. I'm super excited about this topic because I really feel like some of the things that we'll be talking about can make a difference in your experience with men in a positive way. And I think that's really valuable to women out there to know how we can bring out the best in them instead of kind of suffering through what might not be the best in them, right?
Exactly. And I do feel like, even though there's more similarities than differences in men and women, there's some important differences in most men and most women that women do need to understand in order to really bring out the hero in him. So I would love to hear, first of all, why you're so passionate about this topic.
Well, I'm passionate about this topic because I'm privileged to work with single women all around the world and women that want a relationship or women that are in a relationship and are not feeling as fulfilled as they want to. And I've been on both sides of the equation. I spent 43 years as a single woman, struggling in my own love life, successful in other aspects of my life, but feeling like I was beating my head against the wall when it came to my relationships with men.
Mm-hmm.
Through some of the things that I discovered about myself and some of the things that I discovered in terms of how I could communicate and relate to men, I learned some things that helped me to move past some of my own blocks, but also to learn how to invite the best out in a man. And I've now happily been married to my amazing husband for 13 years. And of course, that provides us, I know you know, because you're in a relationship too, Valerie, that provides us with the real life, on the job learning opportunities
Mm-hmm.
that
Oh, yes.
where it's no
I
longer
think
theory, it's reality, and we get to experiment and learn from both our successes and the things that don't work as well.
exactly. Yeah. David, my partner, he was on the phone with a guy friend last week talking about how, and we are planning on getting married soon. It's just the pandemic is kind of complicated, but he was like, marriage is a crucible. It really burns away all the things that are not you, so that you can emerge. And so I completely agree. I think you know these topics, and I teach these on a daily basis, right? But then of course we get to learn them on a deeper level every day as we live our lives and make our own relationships more close and more harmonious.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the tenets of my work, like one of the foundational pieces of my work, is for women to be centered in knowing their own intrinsic value. And when we show up this way, it honors that. It honors our
Mm-hmm.
value, and it also honors the value of a man. It
Definitely.
also honors and respects him. And so it really creates that win-win scenario that I think both men and women desire in a relationship, where both can feel like they're having important needs met, they're moving towards a place of deeper understanding and connection and commitment, and can create that deeper level of love and intimacy that I think most of us really long for. And in speaking with men, this is something that I'm asked frequently. In speaking with men, I think there's a perception with women that maybe relationships aren't that important with men, but I have literally had
Mm-hmm.
men cry to me on some of these interviews when they have shared with me. They're like, if we don't have you, what do we have? Because they don't have
Oh.
any other place to share themselves in a deep and intimate way from their
Hmm.
hearts or their vulnerabilities or their weaknesses or their fears or some of those parts of themselves that they're not going to share with their buddies unless they have a woman in their life that cares enough to be there for them and understand them and support them through some of those things. I have literally have had men cry saying, if we don't have you, what do we have? So I
Mhm.
do believe that it is important to men as well, and they don't always necessarily show their feelings or express those vulnerabilities as frequently or as openly as sometimes women do. But I know for so many men, having a relationship is really meaningful or important. And
Definitely.
this topic that we're going to talk about, I think, is really important because I know out there women are hearing all of the time, you know, you and I are in this industry, and they're hearing this: a man wants to be your hero, and men want to make you happy, and men want to please you. And yet there are so many women that are saying, you know, that's just not really like what I've really experienced with men.
Right.
Right? For a lot of women, that sounds like a nice thing, but it hasn't necessarily been what they've experienced with men. And so what I want to share today are 5 keys that I think can help invite that hero out in a man so that you do experience men in general more in that sort of way. And again, in saying this, we're not making women responsible for men's behavior. We're not making women solely responsible for how a relationship goes. We're just sharing some things that you can experiment with, because I believe that if you do, it will invite kind of that highest, best version of a man out. If a man is, you know, dealing with you in good faith and he's the kind of man that's looking for a relationship. And, you know, we talk a little bit about some of this in kind of general terms because most women do want a man who shows up with that masculine energy. Most women prefer to be more in the feminine, even if they're very strong, successful, independent women. And yet a lot of women, myself included, because I was one of those strong, independent, successful women out there in corporate America for many years, most women don't necessarily know how to invite that or inspire that in a man. And or they sometimes kind of get off track and find that a man's not showing up as a hero, or that a man's showing up in ways that they didn't hope or expect.
Yeah, or that he does in the beginning and then he stopped. And I
Exactly.
think it's, I mean, obviously there could be his own reasons for doing that, but there's things that we can do in order to re-inspire that.
Right. Right. So the first one is kind of a simple one, but I think it's really, really powerful, and it comes down to assumptions that we make. One of the things that can be a killer in relationships are assumptions. And I think you want to assume the best in a man. So what I mean by that, Valerie, is if a man is doing something, not doing something that you don't understand, to not automatically assume a negative motive. So this can start way back
Yes.
in dating, where maybe he doesn't call you, or he doesn't show up as fast as you think he should, or he's not moving the relationship forward in the way that you'd hoped. To not necessarily assume that there's a negative motive beneath
Yep.
that. To see these things when we don't understand what a man is doing or not doing, to assume that there might be something deeper to understand there, rather than just automatically coming to a conclusion that he's a jerk or that he doesn't care or whatever assumption we might come up with.
I
And
love that.
there's a quote by Alison Armstrong, which I absolutely love. And she says, what if no one is misbehaving, including
Mm-hmm.
you? So
Yep.
sometimes we perceive what a man is doing or not doing as sort of misbehaving. You know, we make a judgment around it, we make an assumption around it, and we automatically, in our minds at least, have made him wrong, right?
Yep. Yep. And then if we make him wrong, then he's going to feel defensive. And then, there's no way to avoid an argument from that place.
Mm-hmm. And energetically, they feel that. A man will feel that if you're coming from that place of judgment, if you're coming
Mm-hmm.
from that place of an assumption that he's doing something wrong. You know, we in very subtle ways energetically are going to project that in our communication with him. You know, so
Yep.
for example, the man hasn't called you after a date and you're kind of mad at him and you've kind of assigned he's a jerk, you know, you've got this negative motive, he doesn't care about you, or he's a player, or whatever you've come up with. Then when he does call you, he might be calling you to expect a friendly voice and a friendly
Mhm.
reception, and you're cold. You're a little cold, or
Yeah.
you're a little sarcastic. Ah, wow, nice to hear from you. You know,
Right, right, exactly. You can definitely feel that.
thought you dropped off the map. You know, in other words, so just not assuming the innocence. I think we all want to have the benefit of the doubt from other people and not have judgment placed upon us when someone may not understand what's going on. And I think this is particularly important in relationships, both for men and for women. So that's the first one.
I love that. Yeah, and when you're not assuming that what he did is wrong, then you can be curious. You can bring
Exactly.
that curiosity as to what is the positive reason why he's doing what he's doing. And you might not know, you might be confused, but then of course, if you're authentically confused and curious, then you're not making him wrong and he'll be more likely to want to come in and reveal himself, rather than if he sees that he's being judged from the get-go, then he's
Mhm.
not going to want to open up more with you, and then he'll be cold and distant. I mean, I'm not saying that we control him, obviously, but this is just the automatic filter that people have. If you're feeling like the other person's judging you, right, then you're not going to want to really reveal yourself deeper.
Yeah. Well, and the truth is, we all come into relationships with expectations, whether they're expectations that we're aware of or whether they're kind of more on the unconscious level. But the
Mm-hmm.
problem is that another person doesn't necessarily know what your expectations are. And so
Right.
when we project those expectations on someone and make a judgment about them when they're not showing up quite in the way that we think that they should, it's really not a fair way to assess someone. Now, I'm not in
Right.
any way saying that women should allow themselves to be mistreated. That's not what I'm talking about. Absolutely. I like I said, I'm really about having women being centered in their own value. And part of that can be at certain times um, setting boundaries and setting standards and,
Right.
letting a man know if he's crossed the line. That's a whole nother topic. But
Definitely.
not making those assumptions or assigning negative motives to something we don't understand, as I think is a really good foundational piece to build upon.
Totally, because if you think he has a negative motive, I mean, why are you with him,
Mhm.
right? But if you really believe that he does, um, but just because you think that he has a positive intention doesn't mean that you have to go along with what he's doing.
That's
Hey, like you have every right to do what you're doing, and at the same time I don't want to be around it, is kind of the attitude that I hear you're saying. If you create a boundary, not
correct.
like there's something wrong with him. And obviously there are people that do bad things in the world, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about
Yeah,
you're with a man because you think he's a good guy, otherwise you wouldn't be with him.
yeah, and you're not going to have the default position to be that there's a negative motive to whatever you don't understand.
Yeah, yeah,
And
I love
so,
that.
and unfortunately, if a woman has had disappointing or negative experiences with men in her past, she's
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes kind of hyper vigilant about not having that happen again, understandably so. But it's also not fair to project, someone else's misdeeds from the past onto a current or potential partner. So, we
Right,
kind of have
exactly.
to be aware of that. And other times we're also building up stories, like something happened with one man in the past. And so then we're looking for, other instances of that. We can build even a confirmation bias to believe that all men are a certain way based upon an original
Mm-hmm.
story, and then us kind of, like looking for that and trying to find evidence for that. So I'm just saying, I love this idea from Alison Armstrong, where we start from this assumption of innocence. What if no one is misbehaving, including you? And just use these opportunities that we might not understand with a man to explore, to come from that place of curiosity and observation, and be open to the idea that there might be something deeper to understand there.
Yeah, I really love that. I do completely agree that that's what works.
Yeah. So the second one is being willing to ask for what you want and need. And so this all starts with us being tuned in enough to our own selves, our own bodies. You know, a lot of times for women, our feelings about what we want and need or what would feel best for us really come from within. And you and I have talked about this, Valerie, when we're able to share from that place, from that heart-centered place about some of our
Mhm.
feelings, a man is more able to respond to what we're asking for. He's more able to hear and respond to what we're asking for. And in interviewing all of these men that I've interviewed over the last few years, one theme that these men have emphasized over and over again is men do not speak hint and they don't
Mhm.
read our minds.
Yep.
And we want to please you, but we need to know how to please you. We need to know what that looks like. We need to know what you would want from us. And so also another thing is it really needs to sound like a request, not a
Yeah.
demand, right? So that
Mhm.
allows a man to hear what we're desiring and what we want from them in a different way and gives them a feeling of choice, and so then they get to choose and they can respond. They can respond a lot more to that than us expecting them to read our minds or expecting
Yeah.
them to pick up a hint or expecting them to just automatically know what's going to make us happy or being upset with them because they didn't do any of those things.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's much more productive to make a request on the front end rather than a complaint on the back end. You know, like you never do this and you didn't do that. Like there's a request hidden underneath that complaint, but a man just hears it as a complaint and it's negative and he tunes it out rather than us actually assuming he wants to do something for you if you ask.
Absolutely. And a lot of women are resistant to this because they feel like if they're really expressing this, either it's going to scare a man off or they're going to come off as needy. But
Yeah.
I think it's really important to create the space and provide an invitation for a man to step up for you in those ways because you find out who he is and if he's able to be there for you in some key ways, and you also get to be centered in that feminine energy of feeling and knowing what would really make you happy. And if
Yep.
a man, if we go with the basic premise that a man wants to make you happy, I'm not saying he's solely responsible for your happiness, but if he can add to your happiness, um,
Right.
you letting him know how he can do that can be incredibly valuable. And men have said, you know, please don't make us guess. Please tell us how we can make you happy, and please let it be a clear request. And so
Right.
for women, we can do that in really lovely ways. It can simply be, you know what I'd really enjoy, or you know what would feel really good to me, or you know what would really make me feel more relaxed, or you know what would really help me unwind from what's been a crazy day. And then, you know, request what it is that we would like from our man, and then just say, would that be something you'd be able to do for me? Or what do you think about that? Or is that
Yep.
something you could provide for me? And then he gets to feel like he's in choice. He knows what he's going to do is going to please us. And so you get to have that ability to feel good about having something done for you or a need met or just something you would enjoy or would feel good or help relax you or help de-stress you. And he gets that feeling of knowing that what he's providing is of value, and he gets to be appreciated and acknowledged for it, which for a man is very, very deeply satisfying. I think that's something that women often miss, is how deeply satisfying that can be for a masculine man.
Totally. Yeah. Masculine energy men really do feel such a thrill in accomplishing a goal. And if the goal is to make you happy and you're happy, then he just gets pumped up and he just feels successful in making, you know, like, and then he also gets to feel, you know, like that if he is an empathic man, then your happiness just makes him feel really happy, and then your happiness is magnified. It's such a beautiful experience for both of you to have.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a part of centering us in our own value, is recognizing the value of our happiness. It's
Mm-hmm.
just so um so satisfying for a man, you know, even if he didn't even do something to make us happy but we're just really happy around him. he also gets to feel like he can revel in that, and that'll make him want to make you happier, so it's such a beautiful dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah, and that this leads really nicely into my third tip, which is you set him up to win.
Yep.
So what do I mean by this? What I mean by this is I'm going to use a little analogy here. If you know the game of basketball, I'm not a huge sports fan, but I do know enough that I know the positions in basketball, and two of
Yeah.
the positions are the guard and the forward. So if you think of yourself as being the guard, and in basketball, the guard is often, kind of moving the ball down the court. And, oftentimes they've got some really smooth and graceful maneuvers and can, kind of move things down the court. But then oftentimes, and sometimes the guard will take the shot, the 3-pointer from outside and get all the glory, and that's great. But sometimes, more often than not, the guard will pass the ball to someone in closer to the basket. And so that would be like the forward, because then the forward can kind of make the easy shot and you're more likely to get a basket. And because we're on the same team, we both win, right? Even
Yeah.
though the forward is now going to get the credit for the actual basket. So just to give an example of this, one of the things that my husband and I decided when we got married was that we were not going to be one of those couples who, one or the other was mad or upset because the right thing wasn't done on Valentine's Day or birthday, or because an anniversary was not acknowledged appropriately or whatever, or forgotten, heaven forbid. And so, what kind of the system we've worked out, and this is an example of setting a man up to win, kind of the system we've worked out is that I will say, honey, it's our anniversary coming up in a couple of weeks. And you know what I think would really feel so good and would be so much fun as a way to celebrate that would be to go to like this bed and breakfast and go maybe for such and such a place for dinner, or whatever I have on my mind, or whatever I think sounds really fun. And then I would say something like, would that be something that you would be able to plan and set up for us so that we
Right.
celebrate and enjoy that time together? So in other words, I'm the forward, I'm the guard, I've dribbled the ball down the
Yes.
court, but then I've teed it off to him. He gets to plan and execute that, and he gets to win with me because I appreciate, acknowledge, and enjoy what he's providing for me. But I've set him up in a way to win.
Exactly. I love that. And it's just such a great analogy because that's what he wants to do. If he's a masculine man, he wants to take care of the logistics.
Yeah,
I like to say the woman's the emotional leader. Like we get to lead by sharing our feelings and what it provides for us. And then he gets to lead by setting it up logistically. And that's what we want. We want him to feel like he's empowered to take care of the details, and then we can relax and receive and be happy. And
yeah,
it is work for us, but then it's also work for him, and it's such a beautiful compliment.
yeah. For my most recent birthday, I shared with my husband what I would like for my birthday. I said I would really like a really nice card from you where you share your feelings about me, and I would really love to have some beautiful flowers, and I would really like an Amazon gift card because he knows I like to buy books and things like that from Amazon. And so first thing in the morning on my birthday, he came in, I was still in bed. He had this beautiful card where he had written some of his
Oh.
feelings about me. He had a
Mm.
beautiful, beautiful bouquet of flowers there for me. And I got my Amazon gift card. So it really created this perfect scenario. Like that was exactly what I wanted for my birthday. But had I not
Yeah.
shared that with him, he wouldn't have necessarily known exactly what I wanted.
I
And I
love
gave
that.
him a specific request and, let him know that that would make me feel really happy and feel really loved on my birthday. And he wanted to please me, but I set him up to win. It's the basketball
Exactly.
analogy. And if we are really on the same team, which hopefully that's what's happening in a relationship or partnership, then we
Yeah.
both win, even though he got the points from the basket, so to speak.
Right.
I set him up to win.
I love that. And I just love that analogy, and then the steps that you did because you shared what you wanted and your positive feelings and what it would provide. And then he did it. And that is such a positive feedback loop, right? Then he gets to feel successful and you get to feel happy together. I know some women and some men don't want to be told what to do, or some women want to be surprised. But then I think it's the same thing to set him up to win by telling him the kinds of things we want, even if you're like, it's our anniversary and what I want is to be whisked off to some bed and breakfast somewhere in nature that has this kind of restaurant, and you choose the location because I want to be surprised. Like, I think that some men would rather do that and surprise the woman, but at least that you're really letting him know what kind of thing would make you happy. And then, you're kind of providing the template for him, because otherwise he's got nothing to work with. And then you might have different love languages, and you might want a card, but he doesn't give you a card because he values touch, and he wants to give you a massage instead, which is great, but it wasn't what you wanted. And so it's kind of just leading him in the right direction, I think, is really important.
Yeah, and even saying surprise me is still making a request. It's still letting him know
Yes,
how he could please you. It's still setting him up to win. Because if you're
exactly.
saying, you know what I'd really love for this holiday or for this occasion or for this weekend or whatever it might be, is for you to just surprise me with something that you think would be fun for me. I would love to be surprised. That's
Exactly.
still setting him up, but he's knowing what it is that would make you happy. And then you both get to win. You get to have, your surprise or your specific request fulfilled. He gets to execute that, and he gets the credit for executing that because you're going to appreciate, acknowledge him, and he's going to feel that male energy, that masculine energy of feeling like, wow, I can win with this woman, and wow,
Yes,
I can succeed here, and wow, I can make her happy. Look at how happy she is. And he's going to feel that in a very deep way, which also helps motivate him to want to do more for you, to be there,
exactly.
to show up in these ways again and again. And I think one of the reasons women don't experience men as heroes is because they haven't necessarily let the man know specifically how the man could show up as their hero.
Hmm. It's true. Yeah, like I said, it's usually the complaint on the back end rather than the request on the front end.
Hmm.
And he just isn't practiced in translating a complaint into a request. Some men are, and they're very good at it, but it takes a lot of work to do that. And so if you do the work for him, then it pays dividends.
Yeah, it creates that win-win scenario. Both people get to feel really good in a relationship. And I just thought, when Benjamin and I got married, we talked about this, and I thought, why would you want to be all sad and depressed and or mad and angry on an occasion like an anniversary or Valentine's Day, when
Yeah, it's so
instead you could be
disappointing.
celebrating in a way that felt really good and fun and enjoyable and satisfying for both of you.
Right. Exactly. I mean, that's a co-created dynamic of success.
Hmm. Yeah, so the fourth tip is to use what I call man motivating phrases or words. Like, men oftentimes, because they feel responsible in a lot of ways for our happiness, and because they are sensitive to whether or not they feel like they're succeeding in a relationship or what they have to bring to the table is meaningful to them. Even really small things that they offer or really small things that they share or say can be reinforced to help them to feel like what they're bringing to the table matters and makes a difference for you as a woman. And that's going to, again, help motivate them to be more present, to be more open to wanting to support you, to wanting to show up as a hero. So these can be really simple phrases, and 3 of these I got from John Gray in one of my interviews with him, but I really like them. So if a man's just sharing something, he's sharing an opinion, or he's sharing a suggestion, or he's sharing an idea, which men often do because they want to feel like, again, that they're contributing in some way to a woman's life. If you can just acknowledge it, even if you don't agree with it, in a positive way by saying something like, oh, that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really simple thing, but it makes a man feel validated. Like
Yep.
his opinions or his thoughts are worth considering, are worth hearing, that what he has to offer in terms of, what he's bringing to the table makes a difference for you. Even if you don't necessarily 100% agree with it, for him to feel heard and for him to feel like at least his point of view is respected. I think that's key to that phrase. The second thing is to let him be right sometimes, like, wow, you're right. I don't know if you have experienced this, Valerie, but there have been times in my relationship with my husband where I was so convinced that I was right about something. And then he offered an alternative point of view, shall we say, an alternative
Yes.
perspective. And not only did I see that it had validity, but I could actually see that his perception in particular cases was actually more well thought out, or there was more of a foundation for his point of view than where I was coming from. Like maybe mine was solely an emotional response, but there were some deeper layers to something. So just allowing him once in a while to be right. Wow, you're right. Or if he comments on something, instead of taking the adversarial role
Right.
in all situations, like what's wrong with just letting him be right sometimes? Some couples get
Exactly.
into this weird synergy where they're like arguing almost every little point. And
Right. And I think that like there's a misconception that women shouldn't stroke a man's ego because he already has too big of an ego. But I think it's important to understand. I mean, unless he really is a narcissist, which is another conversation. But if you're with a guy who's a pretty good guy and he's acting like he needs to be right and important, it's actually because he feels insecure. And if you make him right when he actually is, then he'll get to feel more secure and then he won't be so attached to it all the time.
yeah, and even if you don't agree with it, with something a man is saying, if you're saying something like, that's a good idea, or that's a really interesting point of view, or one of the other phrases John Gray shared was, well, that makes sense. Well, that makes sense that you would see it that way, or that makes sense that, there might be some validity there. Well, that makes sense. Even if you're then saying, another thing I see about this, or another way of
Yes.
looking at this might be. So in other words, you're not necessarily being disagreeable in your
Right.
conversations, and you're looking again for that the ways that you can connect, even in situations where you might be coming from different points of view. Hopefully that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, because you're right from your point of view and he's right from his point of view. And I think having that attitude in a relationship is not a debate. It's not, there's that old adage that you could either be right or you can be happy, which is
Exactly.
recognizing that you're both right from you both have a different point of view, you both have different backgrounds, you both have different histories, you both have different desires or needs in that situation. And so if you're arguing against him rather than saying, well, here's my point of view and you're right from your point of view and I'm right from my point of view, then there's somewhere you can go in that conversation, as opposed to having only one point of view be right. Then yeah, I mean, there's nothing you can create from there.
Yeah, yeah, and at least allowing for, if he has a different point of view or a different perspective on something, at least allowing that to be a valid point of view, even if it happens to be different than your point of view. So
Right.
just acknowledging the validity of something that a man is sharing or that a man is saying can go a long way toward keeping those communication channels open, because then we don't start, kind of like stonewalling each other, and, he's not just completely shutting down, because some men will just completely shut down if they feel like what they have to share is not heard or respected.
Yeah.
Another little piece of this is not from John Gray, but another little man motivating phrase that I found is important is like, if something goes wrong, let's just say he takes you out to the movies and the movie is a complete disaster, it's a bust, just as an example. A
Mm-hmm.
man, because he feels responsible for the experience that he's providing for you, he's going to feel that personally. If you're saying, oh, that was the worst movie I've ever seen, I just can't even believe what a disappointment that was. That's going to seems funny to us sometimes, because women, we can bond over those kind of conversations. But for
Right.
most masculine men, they're going to feel that really personally. and this is kind of a simple example, but if you can, wherever possible, look for what is good or positive in a situation. And it could sound like, you know what, I know maybe the movie wasn't quite what we hoped for, but I so loved being with you tonight, and I really
Right.
appreciate you treating me. And you know what, I could never get enough popcorn. I don't care what they say, that movie theater popcorn is the best. I loved it.
Yeah, right, exactly.
You
If
know,
you're
so
finding something to appreciate him about, and then he'll feel like you're not making him responsible, and then you can be like, I mean, yeah, that movie wasn't what I'd hoped for. What did you think? And then he'll complain about it, and then you can connect in the complaint about the movie because you've set this general context of, you know what, it doesn't matter that the movie sucked. I just loved holding your hand, and I could do anything and enjoy my time with you, then he's going to feel, oh, he created a great experience. And then, yeah, the movie sucked. But, I
mm,
totally agree. It's like he needs to feel like you're happy to be with him and you're happy to have an experience that he provides for you.
yeah, and if something goes a little wrong, like you almost kind of let him off the hook. It's kind of like it's not your fault. Even saying
Right.
those words, it's not your fault, can feel really, really good to a man. In fact, I've said that phrase in some of the interviews where I've talked to men. I've said, this is a phrase that I know feels really good when I say it to my husband.
Yeah,
Something goes a little wrong, I say, it's not your fault, honey. But what I did enjoy, or what is good about this is such and
exactly.
and just another little story that John Gray shared with me that really illustrates this point is he was talking about his late wife Bonnie and how when they were dating, he was really starting to feel a lot of feelings for her, but he wasn't quite sure yet if she was the person he wanted to actually go into a long-term marriage with yet. And they went on this little road trip. And he got lost. Not only did he get lost, they were taking like a long road trip, and he was driving through the night, and he got so lost that he ended up in totally the wrong state. This is back before GPS systems or any of that kind of stuff. And
Right,
so
exactly.
she woke up. She had been sleeping in the cars. He'd been driving through part of the night, and she woke up, and they were totally in the wrong state. And he was like trying to figure out, where he'd gone wrong and how to get back on track and all of that kind of stuff. And she woke up, and he was kind of nervous to tell her how far off track he'd gotten. But he said, I got lost, and not only am I lost, but we're like completely in the wrong state. And she said, this is the moment when he said that he knew that he was in love with her and wanted to marry her, because he knew that by what she is about to say, what I'm about to share with you, he knew that he could be human and he could be real, and that she would still love him and she
Mm.
would still accept him and she would still be the kind of woman that he could make happy. She just said, I have no idea where we are, but I'm so happy to be here with you. And this is the most beautiful sunrise I've seen in I can't remember how long. And so for him, it was
Oh.
like, it's not my fault. She's not mad that we're so lost. She's not mad at me because I'm the stereotypical guy who didn't ask for directions or any of that. She's just happy to be here with me. And she's just present with what is right, which is the beautiful sunset.
Yeah, that's so inspiring,
hmm So
and
he
I think
said
that
that
really
was the
summarizes
precise,
that.
yeah, he said that was the precise moment when he knew he wanted to share his life with her. So I just,
Right.
that's a beautiful illustration of this. So then the last one is something we talk about a lot, and that's being able and willing to receive from a man, and
Mm.
then receive in what I call graciously receiving, which means not only are we open and available to receive what a man has to offer, but we receive it from a place of appreciation and acknowledgement. So we let a man know that what he has to offer, that what he brings to the table, that what he's providing for us means something to us, that it's appreciated, it's seen, he's seen. And that, I think, is, like I said earlier, something that women don't understand as deeply as we could, that is so valuable to a man. It's part of what makes him feel that masculine energy that in turn creates that chemistry and attraction that we want in a romantic relationship, as opposed to just like a business relationship or a friendship kind of relationship. When he
Definitely.
feels seen and acknowledged and appreciated in some of those ways, that's part of what creates and allows that kind of chemistry and connection to continue in a romantic relationship. And one of the things that happens in longer term relationships, and why women sometimes experience men as heroes in the early stages, but not over the long run, is we start taking some of these things for granted, or we stop
Mm-hmm.
acknowledging or appreciating, or we start focusing on what isn't happening instead of reinforcing what is happening, or we make him
Yeah.
wrong, or we blame. And again, I'm not in any way blaming women for men's behavior. I'm just sharing some things that I know and I have experienced that can make a difference to help invite those hero characteristics out in a good man.
Yeah, I love that. It's just it is human nature to appreciate something. I mean, to stop appreciating something that we're getting all the time. But I think it is important to keep that positive cycle going. It's like he does something, we receive it, we share our positive feelings, we appreciate it, and then he feels successful and wants to do more. And if we get off of that cycle, then there's, of course he's going to want to keep doing things that make us happy if he's a good guy, but if it's not making us happy anymore, then why would he do it? So it is that reciprocal give and take. And I do want to say it's not like we have to sugarcoat things, just because we're pointing out what's going well, but in every moment there's something that you can appreciate and something that you can complain about, and it's just about keeping that ratio positive, which I
Mhm.
think works in all areas of life, not just in a romantic relationship, but especially if you want to bring out that hero quality in a guy, it's important to keep that ratio high so that he feels like he can be a hero, that it's going to actually work.
Yes, because as you and I have discussed before, most men do tend to lean in the direction of efficiency, and they're not going to put effort and energy into something unless they feel like it has some reward
Right,
or
exactly. And
something
I mean, that's
in it.
human nature.
Yeah, yeah, it's human nature, but I think it's particularly true of men. They're
Right.
just simply not going to put effort, energy, attention into something unless they're feeling like there's some benefit or some
Yeah.
outcome or some reward in that. And
Yep.
so when we can provide that, and again, not in an over the top, phony, syrupy way, but just letting a man know that he's seen, that he's appreciated, that he's acknowledged, that what he brings to the table makes a difference in our lives, it tends to really invite the hero out in a man. And I've been in my marriage now long enough, Valerie, that, this is something I have to continue to have an awareness around, because
Oh yeah.
we do fall into patterns, and it can be easy to start taking some of these things for granted, where in reality there are little things that my husband does for me, like on a daily basis, that make a difference in my life. And I can see, I mean, it's almost like he puts his shoulders back and feels so proud of himself when I share with him how much I appreciate that, or how much of a difference he
Yeah.
makes in my life. Even now, I mean, it's almost like I can see like a physical response to these words that I'm saying, where it's kind of like he feels kind of proud of himself. And it
Yeah.
feels good to him. I can actually physically see that.
Right, definitely. It's true, and it's because he also feels safe enough to show you what he's feeling because you created that safety over time. And then you can really see how proud he feels for doing those little things that make you happy. And it really does make a difference.
Yeah,
They say it's the little things, but it really is. It's the little things that we do for each other that matter just as much as the big things.
absolutely. Absolutely. And those positive interactions, those positive interactions that build a good feeling and sustain a good feeling and foster feelings of love and connection between two people. That's what, some of the benefits of this are. So it really does create a win-win scenario on both sides. And if we're in a partnership, if we're on the same team, like the basketball analogy, then
Yeah.
all of that is going to be supported by the things that we're talking about here.
I love that analogy. That's something I want to leave people with too. It's just that, the I don't really know any of the roles in basketball, but the analogy that comes to me is like you're the wind beneath his wings. He can
Mhm.
soar higher, because you're assisting him, and it's that beautiful um, partnership that you can create more together than you could on your own. With him as your hero. Or and you as the queen and he's the king. I mean, I love that there's all kinds of metaphors we can come up with.
Right.
Um, and I know that you have a free gift that is an ebook and audio about the 10 secrets that every woman needs to know about men in order to really create this dynamic of him being your hero. And so I would love to have you share about that.
Yeah, I really love this free gift because it's not something that is just, something I created out of my head. This is information that I gleaned from interviewing hundreds of men over the last few years, and some of the key things that sometimes are a little bit more subtle that we may or may not see or understand about men that they have shared with me. And I think it's things that can help a woman, to support a woman, to invite and inspire that hero in a man, and again create some of that win-win scenario. So these 10 secrets are things, that we look at, in a little bit more nuanced way, and things that you might not be fully aware of, and helps you to understand a little bit more about what's going on in the hearts and minds of men, and goes further with this conversation on how you can understand a little bit about some of the motivations of men, and how you can go further with inviting him into kind of that heroic best version of himself. And I'm all about creating win-win relationships. I just think that's the ideal, is when both people can be in a relationship or an interaction and feel like there was benefit on both sides. And I think this, helps support you to create and co-create those kind of relationships with men, and ultimately that man that you want to be in partnership with.
I agree. I'm excited to read your ebook as well. I think that there's so many ways of putting this information, and you did a really great job. Do you want to just summarize those 5 keys once again before we end, so that we have them on top of mind?
Yeah. So the first one is assume the best in him. Don't automatically go to the negative motive, right? The second one is be willing to ask for what you want and need, and be willing to share from the heart, and to make those requests in a specific and clear way, in a way that sounds like a choice, not a demand.
Yeah.
Number 3 is setting him up to win, and that's when the basketball analogy came in. If you're both on the same
Yeah.
team, if you're both working toward the same goal of having a loving partnership relationship, you both win when one person wins. So you can set him up to win, and you're not losing anything by letting him have the credit for your idea, so to speak.
Right.
The fourth is to use man motivating phrases and words. This is all about letting him be seen and heard, and accepting that he may have a valid point of view, even if it differs from yours. Being open to letting him be right and not always making him wrong, those kinds of things. And then the last one is to receive, graciously receive, and reinforce with admiration and appreciation. So he
Yeah.
knows that his presence in your life makes a difference.
I love that. I think that's such a wonderful way of putting it. And you've just shared so many nuggets of information. And so I encourage everyone to share your questions and comments in the comments below, so that we can answer them. And I think you've done such a good job in really making this succinct. And now, of course, it's about really applying it. Because I know it's easier said than done, but when you do, it's just amazing. I mean, my relationship is really amazing as well, because these are such universal principles. And I think that there's so many nuggets in this. And I encourage everybody to download Michelle's ebook, The 10 Secrets Every Woman Needs to Know About Men, to really bring this information home and apply it. And it's just been so wonderful to speak to you today.
Oh, thank you so much, Valerie. Thank you so much for having me, and for inviting me, and for the opportunity that we had to connect and create this win-win opportunity together today, because I've really appreciated connecting with you in this way, and appreciate your perspective and point of view, and what you're bringing to the world as well. So I'm honored to be able to connect with you. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. And to everyone out there, like, let's keep the conversation going.
Yep. Keep the conversation going. Let us know what you think. Leave your comments and questions in the chat below and
Yeah.
in the running dialogue below. And then be sure to get that free gift because I think you'll really like it. And it's the extension of this conversation.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And I hope that you have such a wonderful, love filled day.
Bye bye.